Well, that might be a better question for those that are actually representing the United States, but as a resident, activist, my understanding is that the United States and other developing nations did not decide to contribute to that Green Fund. And so this particular COP, the social movements and those with credentials on the inside will be trying to influence the United States and other developing nations to pass that within the negotiations to fund this, the Green Fund. Thus, the importance of our, well, having our relationships way even before now, but as we have these conversations and connections and relationships with those in the continent, we can help lift up their narratives and their needs for their transformation, which will probably be keenly connected to many of our needs for transformation. So there is organizing that intends to have what I'm coining as like a black zone within the green zones and the blue zones. Last year, they are now called Tap Earth, held a African diaspora reception, global reception, where we were able to come together from all across the world to have conversations of the African diaspora, just to get to know each other. I personally held with my with the NAACP Caribbean and Caribbean Jamaican conversations and dinners. We held dinners with environmental justice leaders from the United States. Dr. Robert Bullard, who's known as the godfather of environmental justice. Dr. Beverly Wright of the Deep South, known as the godmother of environmental justice. Labor, because labor unions are extremely important in the conversation. And so, yes, but we have to be planning to connect now. We need to know who we are so that we can be at the tables and conversations together. I did receive an invitation to try to organize perhaps something with one of your Brazilian residents potentially, where I could bring Dr. Wright and Dr. Bullard and a representative from Brazil, but obviously want to make sure that we have all of the right voices of community at those conversations as well. Well, I can't speak to what Brazil's expectations. One, I think that has to come from the Brazilian people. There are many people, social movements that come to these various COPs and come with their own set of demands to influence their own governments as well as the other representative governments to make agreements that are for the people. For example, at COP21, they wanted to reduce the global warming temperature to 2 degrees Celsius. It was the social movement that demanded that it be reduced to 1.5 degrees. and that is now part of the Conference of Parties agreement. Last year at the COP26, many of the people of the African diaspora were not allowed to be inside the COP. They weren't able to get the badges and the credentials. In addition, were unable to travel because of the pandemic, and there was like vaccination inequity or inoculation inequity. So now this COP27 will have ideally the most greatest number of people of African descent in attendance at a COP27. Some of the things that the climate justice, environmental justice movement has called for is for developing countries to fund the Green Fund so that these dollars go to the global south, to countries that have not contributed to the climate changing, but yet are on the front lines of the climate impacts. In addition, calling for saying that geotechnologies are false solutions, which are technologies like carbon capture sequestration. They continue to prop up the same polluting systems, allowing them to pollute, but capturing the pollution and infusing it into the ground. And we know that there will be negative impacts, fracturing, and things of that nature. There's even studies, Stanford University studies, that says that it is negligible in its reduction in CO2 emissions. There's the conversations around loss damage, those communities that are experiencing the most damage. How can that be funded to assist them in their livelihood and abilities to thrive? The emphasis of my work is around Black liberation and its transformation, and to ensure resiliency, both in the United States and across the globe, to have conversations and create understandings around the importance about our transformation, as we are in a climate crisis, a climate emergency. And those that are most vulnerable are those that are living in violent communities, those that are living in poverty, those that are living in flooded areas. And so it is extremely important to have communications on how we can be resilient and be liberated. As it relates to the just transition to clean energy and other technologies, and the conversation at COP27, I tell a narrative around those of us in the African diaspora having come across the transatlantic, and in my case, the Middle Passage to the United States. We've been seeking a just transition for over 401 years. We have endured in the United States Jim Crow and redlining, mass incarceration. Our children are being identified to go to the prison pipeline by the time they are in third grade. And we find that these same systems are systemic across the globe. As we try to solve this climate crisis, we are also in a place for opportunity, the green economic opportunity, and so we can lean into clean energy. Some countries or continents do not have access to energy at all. It's an opportunity for them to have electricity, and they can start with solar or wind or geothermal, cleaner types of energy. Some countries, United States, I believe Brazil, have power plants with fossil fuels that have lots of toxins. They are the high contributors to CO2 and climate. If we can, and they cause a lot of health problems for particularly Black and brown communities that tend to live within close proximity. And so we can morph into clean energy. It can reduce communities or families' energy burden. It can ramp up job opportunities, good paying jobs, and so much more. So I think these decisions should be community driven and community led. They should be extremely local. Community, though, may want to think about what are our challenges and what are the varying solutions. Who can we partner with? When we think about wind turbines on farms, I think that community has to think about what would be the benefits and what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of having a wind farm. Will the wind farm bring more jobs, more economic opportunity? Will it stop this power plant, if it's in the nearby area, from emitting toxins that are shortening the mortality of people's lives? If the strengths outweigh the weaknesses, then the community should consider leaning into wind or consider having solar farms as opposed to wind farms. They're both clean forms of energy. In the United States, there is a similar debate, typically with rural farmers. They having debates and passing ordinances where the wind farms can only be so close or so far from communities. So they are making different agreements around how it can exist with communities. Also, a community could negotiate community benefit plans and community benefit agreement to say, if we're going to host these particular technologies that have some disadvantages to us, we also want this and that, free health care, or we want X amount of jobs to come from our community, so that you can still consider having this just transition. Well, I think the deforestation is a global concern. I understand the Amazon is 20% of the biodiversity in the globe. I think that reforestation is extremely important, and creating other job opportunities for those that might be doing the logging in the Amazon We had discussions the other day about what would it look like if there were a manufacturing deployed somewhere near and around the Amazon area to, let's say, manufacture electric vehicle charging stations or electric vehicles. Like the United States, it appears that Brazil has a lot of vehicle emissions that are also major contributors to the climate changing and may want to transition to electric vehicles, electric buses, everything to reduce the CO2, create these jobs near the Amazon, and perhaps create a frame that will reduce the logging and the deforestation that is happening in the Amazon, and provide opportunities for, as I understand, a lot of violence is taking place in the area. Perhaps economic opportunity can help curtail some of that activity as well. The environmental justice or Black movement is growing. We are having conversations all the time. Things like the virtual platforms are really helping us to connect and build relationships. I think the relationships are key so that we can share our best practices with each other, so that we can create an understanding with each other, so that we can share our experiences of the systemic racism that we experience in the United States versus the systemic racism that is experienced in Brazil, so that we can help to create the solutions that are necessary, not only for our resiliency and transformation, but also to create better practices that will curtail this climate crisis. It is the racist systems that have put the polluting systems in Black and brown communities that are the causation of the climate crisis. The integrated panel on climate change identified that colonization is a causation of climate change. The Chisholm Legacy Project, which I work for, my role, we are connected with the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. We've connected with people in Norway. We've reached out to people in Australia and Canada, and now Brazil. We invite you to attend our virtual conversations where we're shaping a global framework that perhaps we can create, and whether we present it within our respective countries or we present it within the COP27 framework, that we have this shared understanding of what we need together for our own not only survival but our ability to thrive.